So here's a video you guys been waiting for. I know you've seen in the past we bought this 2520 Timberking, and I'm going to give you an update. I've sawed 6 or 8 logs now so far with it, and it's gotten cold and snowy, and I got it here in my shop now, and I've been doing some modifications on it and some different things, and gonna go through this whole thing with you guys on my thoughts and feelings for the sake of you guys that have Timberkings, that want to buy Timberkings, and the people who build these Timberkings. I want to tell you what I think the changes or the option should be, and I just want to say this thing is really built. There's a really heavy frame on here. It appears to be all hand welded, and as far as durability, from some of the mills that are around, this is one of the hardier mills. I'm going to go through on what I did, things I've added or changed slightly. We're going to start here with the pole. Now, the pole on this machine, or the tongue, you could call it, it can be an option to be removed or just welded right into the machine, not to be removed. And the purpose of that is for maybe security purposes. If you're out on a job somewhere, you could take your pole off and it would avoid theft. They couldn't drive off with your mill. But the first thing I noticed when we walked around it, when I seen it for the first time, I thought, well, to remove the pole, when you're working around this machine, it's one less obstacle for you to be walking around. That to me might even be a bigger benefit if you're not out on the road. But if you're not going out on the road, it may not really matter. And then the other thing, they got this pin here you remove to slip this tongue out, which is very simple. There's just a cotter pin there. And I thought of it, well, it could be shoved in underneath the machine for storage, like so it's not hanging out there when you're not towing it. But on this particular model, there's 2 log rollers and 2 dogs clamps for the log, so that would interfere with that, and that idea wouldn't necessarily work. And then you got your jack attachment. Now, for one thing, I'm going to say right off, Timberking, you guys need to put a heavier jack on this thing. I'm going to do it. I've heard other guys that probably went the same way, but even if it's one of these versions, should have been in here, where the jack could actually be physically took off. Besides, it takes weight out of the pole, so when you're handling the pole, because that's a pretty heavy chunk of steel, and then it's not as clumsy because right now I got this mill leveled and set up as if I was going to saw. I'm just learning and getting good at doing that thing, so I did check a few settings on my guide wheels and stuff. In order to do that, you need to have the mill perfectly level. So in the shop here, we leveled it up. So really, this jack does not do anything during the operating of this mill. It's just for towing or when you maybe want to just store it someplace. So anyway, that, and then they had tie straps on here to hold the wiring for the lights that you'd hook to your truck. And I thought, well, a removable pole, you need to have, so you can take the wire off the pole to get the pole out. So what I did is I cut those tie straps away, and then I took a piece of chain link, and that's all that is a piece of chain link, and I cut out a hole in it that just big enough to squeeze this wire through, so that I can pinch that down in there. And there's that little nub there that holds the link together where the original welds are. That almost works perfect. And that's easy enough, and then took a little spray paint and dressed it up. But that is just a little something I did, so I don't have to be worrying about my wiring dragging on the road or something. If I would, you got to make it quick and simple. We're gonna go on down through here and illustrate what else I did. The Dynamat. We seen this. There's a guy down in Carolina, a Gary Atkinson, I think is called. He's got a YouTube, I believe, down there. And then there's a Thomas up in like northern Wisconsin that he's got a mill like, I think like 2 sizes smaller than this. But his, again, he does lot of YouTube on the Timberking Sawmill, and he was down there visiting Gary, and Gary has got the most modified mill I think that there's out there as of right now, and he's quite a fellow when it comes to mechanical additions to something that can get done. But he put this in his, so then we got this bright idea to buy a bunch of this. I even stuck it in behind the wheel. It's and then up here too, and it cuts down on the noise. I didn't have a lot of experience sawing it, so far as how much it really works, I'm sure it does. So, but I can already tell just bumping it works. That is one addition. This motor, that's a Kubota motor. I believe I may have had the same motor in my last skid steer. They're supposed to have quite the reputation. Although all this wiring, harness, and different computer components and stuff kind of spooked me a little through time with dust and things like that. And I'm sure that's not something we're going to be able to figure out ourselves if there is ever a problem. But they're supposed to be pretty good, so I'm not gonna down any of that. On the control end of things here, I made a few changes. The guide roller, which is, if you look close, you can see, now that's just plain electrical, but that'll tuck away there. So when you're sawing, you'll want that roller to be reasonably close to what you're cutting, and if there's a knot or something that's sticking out further than you thought, you may be able to just push it back or get it closer as you're actually milling. But this switch right here was way over here, and the way this is set up, what they want you to do, so you got your forward and reverse level for your head, and then this is our speed control for forward. Reverse, there is no speed control. But they want you to be holding this in the forward position and then controlling this dial to control your speed. Now you got both hands occupied, so if you need to move your guide roller, which was way over there, they want you to let go of this, hold on to this, and go over here and do your guide roller, then go back like this. I just thought there's a better way. So I moved it closer over to here. They did give me another one of these guide roller stickers, and it was just a matter of drilling a hole. The wiring did reach. So now, I'm over here like this, and I can still, do that. I guess it's more preference, and for whatever reason, if that ended up being the issue, I can always move it back. But another thing is the clutch switch. It's just like a little rubber fitting that screws over an actual toggle switch. I think it's more to keep the moisture out of the switch. But I took that off and painted it red. I just thought the clutch should be, because all these switches on here are all the same size and color. It just kind of defines that the red one is your actual blade. So at first I'm kind of fumbling things a little bit. I'm sure I'm going to get better at it, but if anybody else ever uses this mill, it's going to be a little easier for them. The other thing is what Gary did is he put a detent in the forward. So you can actually let go of this, and it will, once you got your speed going, you can walk away for a second or be viewing your log or something other than just standing here holding that lever all day until it finishes its cut. I questioned Timberking on it. They told me that, because of liabilities, they want the operator back here holding the lever. Now, when you're sawing, when you get into a log, they typically do not want your head to stop cutting. Of course, unless you would, if there would be something happen, you would have to stop. But to make the best cut, you want your head to just keep flowing through till you get through. So if you let go of this even for a second, it's not exactly gonna, you don't want to stop while you're making a cut, and just for the quality of the cut. So what I did is this is just a cord from a pull chain on a chainsaw, some extra cord, and I put a little groove into the handle here, so I'm able to have that. And in order for me to get it off, it's just seconds. It's a second. It will hold it if I want to walk away for a second, for instance, to observe from a different angle or something. I do believe that's not something that we should, that detent, I do believe that detent is something that is a plus more than not. As far as all this other stuff, it takes a little getting used to once you get to know where everything is. Another thing, being that we have 2 log turners, you can switch it to front or rear or both. And that's just on raising the log turner. As far as the chain, there's only one that operates the actual direction of the chain. That makes perfect sense. But what we need to do is our log spike, which is this guy. There's 2 log spikes on this machine. What I notice happens is, so we're using this one that's closer to the back of the machine, but this one is moving too. And when I run my height for my log spike, and then as you start cutting down through your kent, you want your log spike to be lower or almost to the point where you want to get it down below so you don't run into it. Sometimes that one is all the way down and this one's still up some. There could be air in the lines. I've been working it quite a bit, and I believe they should be separate from each other on a switch, just like the log turners are. I believe when you got 2 of them. Yeah, I understand it's going to take a little something more to make that happen, but I'm scared what I'm going to do is be looking at this dog and saying, yep, he's out of the way, and I'm going to forget about that one. And a lot of times I'll clamp the log here, and then that one is somehow positioned different yet. So you got to work them both together. So anyway, that's my theory on that. They should be on a separate switch. And then this whole mechanism, this would be pretty much the brain of the machine. You got your set works, which helps you calculate your lumber thicknesses and stuff, and then your control panel for the motor. You got your throttle, which is basically 2 buttons. You got a low, and then if you want to, put it up, you got to press that one, and then you got your start over here. Like my skid steer's got a dial for the throttle, which it's still electric, but I think with big gloves on and trying to watch everything, I think it would be a lot better if there was a dial that controlled motor RPMs than just a button. Because there's sometimes when you start this machine and you're just letting it warm up and you're going to get you want to get it set up for sawing, and you got to take your log loaders and put them down. You want to run it maybe like only at half throttle. It's kind of tedious messing with the buttons trying to hit that spot always, but that's one little thing of mine that I would change. And then this whole mechanism, this is pretty much the brain of the machine. Sticking out here, you got this swivel deal where you can pull this pin. I even made a place here for it. I drilled a hole right here, so if I want that pin out of there so I can swing my command center back and forth, I thought, well, where are you going to put this pin? Unless you got a toolbox handy by, that's going to end up falling off into the sawdust or something. So something little there. But a big thing, and I did talk to Timber King about this, is somehow getting this whole mechanism, because it kind of sticks out the back of the machine maybe about another 4 or 5 feet here, past my tail lights and past the main frame. To get this somehow so it folds up out of the way or in a safer place, or during storage, or during when you're moving this thing. Because when I'm even backing in here, I've got off my tractor several times to make sure I wouldn't bump this in, because this whole thing is like 30-some feet long. This will cut 24 footers, and then that's just from the blade to the end of the deck, and then you got your whole carriage here, and of course your control center here. So I do believe there's a way to do that. Should be an option. If you weren't going to be moving your mill very often at all, it may not matter. I'm so concerned that even a small tap back here of any kind is going to ruin something that's going to be expensive and hard to fix. Another thing I did right away when we looked at this mill, when we first got trained, I thought these tail lights are kind of just hanging out here. Now right now I got my carriage all the way back. But when you use the drag back, which is these items here, these bars, and that'll bring your especially your first cuts off your log, your slab, and your flitches and stuff, they'll come back towards you, and you may have another person over on the side here. Well, it's going to end up knocking those taillights off. So I just got some scrap steel right away and shaped it up real nice and painted it. And what I had to do here is I had to actually drill new holes to drop the lights down another ½ inch or so to get them out of the way so that there was room to put that piece in there. So a simple thing. Again, that's something I think Timber King could have just had done, but everything costs extra, I guess. And then another thing my wife got excited about, Gary put this on his, these reflective stickers, and you can get that stuff in a roll. So I kind of pasted them around. Again, it just makes it more aware if you happen to be traveling in the dark a little bit that this thing don't get rear-ended. Because again, this mechanism sticking out here, I don't think there's anybody that owns one of these that doesn't think the same way. That's a sensitive area. Other modifications I did on the water that lubricates the blade. Okay, so you got this mechanism here and this hose that comes up, and before I added all this hose basically went to here, and you had your on off, and then you had a little valve part way down, which was just basically a little piece of plastic like that. Again, kind of bothered me because when I'm back there holding that go lever and I get into a log and I say, oh shucks, I forgot to turn my water on. Now I stop, got to walk over here, turn on my water, and then go back over there. And I just feel it doesn't make it safe being like that. And I questioned Timberking again. I said, okay guys, couldn't we have put a solenoid switch on as standard equipment, or even as an option? And they told me that, well, that's just a convenience. And I said, well, even log rollers and some of those other gadgets on here are conveniences, but I'm not trying to knock Timberking. They're a great company. I think those guys got a heck of a machine here. But out of all the modifications that are done, I believe this solenoid is one of the most important ones to get done. This wire here is just tapped into the clutch, so when I put on this red switch to turn on the blade, it activates my solenoid, and the water starts to flow at the speed you got it set for. And then you have, this would be a needle valve with a sight glass in it. You got this fine adjustment here, so we're just using water. I'll add a little Dawn soap to it right now, which is kind of a cheaper thing. Even some of the soap I use up in the milk house there for hand washing things, that's a really high concentrated soap. It doesn't take very much. And you can even see it as it drips onto the blade, it gets a little sudsiness to it. I think that's what I'm gonna start with here. And some guys use diesel fuel, there's some other products. And when you're using stuff that costs more than just water, of course, you're gonna want that solenoid. Because you get times when you have to stop the blade and remove material, or you're trying to turn your log and either you forget to turn it off, or you just say, oh, it only take me a second, it takes you 5 minutes, and then pretty soon you got fluid just leaking on the ground and wasting. So I think this is a real base plus. So what I need here is I need to get a connection, like a plug here for these wires. Right now I just got them wire nutted because we live in the north where we got cold weather, and this whole mechanism I'm going to want to take off and put into heated along with my water tank, or drain it. I mean, but anyway, take it with me, put it in your truck and take it home with you if you're going to leave your mill like out, you know, overnight when it's going to get cold, because it's going to be that way. And then another thing is they recommended 1200 PSI on the blade. I just wrote it right on the frame. That way there's no question is what's recommended. I mean, some guys run it higher. Some will say 1100 is enough. Maybe depends on the blade, depends on the species of wood, those type of things. But that just kind of gives you a reference of this. Another thing, and to back it off to 500 when you're done, just to remember to do that. That's just getting used to that whole thing. And then again, the Dynamat. I got Gary sending me one of those wipers. There's a felt wiper cartridge that holds it into place, and then it's basically like a sponge in a little container that holds it right in here. And you can put it on that side too as more of a cleaner. But that way, whatever fluid you're using, lubricant you're using, will go onto that felt. Again, instead of it just kind of splattering everywhere, but should stay. They claim it helps keep the guide wheels and everything a lot cleaner when you're cutting like sappy pine or certain things like that. Again, I think should be an option or standard equipment from Timberking themselves, or any band mill, really. I mean, I think that's kind of the heart of your machine. Just like having oil in your crankcase, it's without it, you're just wearing it out. That's my thoughts on that. Another thing I thought about, I think is very important, is some sort of toolbox, especially for like these mounts. Now these are designed to go through this hole, but you line it up over this nut here, and it goes down through that hole, and there's one for each side, and that's where your whole power head would sit during transport. Now, one thing I found out the hard way, because when I was going to do the welding on it for the lights, I disconnect my battery and I hooked it up and I pulled it out the door so it would be closer to my welder, and I didn't have the head secured, and it started coasting, and it actually ran into one of the log stops and ended up breaking a blade. It wasn't moving very fast, but I didn't realize that could actually move by itself without the machine on. I thought the hydraulics would hold it in place, but live and learn. So I did break one blade already, not during sawing, but we have to learn from our mistakes, and the best mistakes are ones that somebody else makes that you learned from, not the ones you had to make and then suck them up and pay for them. So anyway, a toolbox, and then for it to be big enough to hold, for instance, extra blades, your 4-foot level. You know, you got this big adjustable wrench for those lockdowns there. There's a few other small parts. Silicone spray, they advise that to be put on, like the chains and stuff. If you ever had a blade get stuck in a log, you may need one of these just to get the blade back out if it happened to fall off or got dull and started making crooked cuts, so you don't have to mess up your log. The ball, because I've been moving it with the tractor in the yard here, so I'm able to have it handy. I don't know, but down in here there's an awful lot of space, and typically your head is working on that end most of the time anyway. This is only if you're going to be sawing really long lumber, but I might build something and then get it fastened up down in here so that I can have all these accessories, extra parts, and some adjusting tools and things with, and then they have it waterproof, of course. So, but as far as building a shed for this, I got ideas. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do yet. If I want to build here, or there's kind of a lot of things I haven't quite figured out yet, but I'm sure we'll figure something out. But one thing is for sure and for certain, we do not want to leave this thing out in the elements right along. I mean, I don't think it's going to kill it if it gets wet once or twice during operating days or something like that, but kind of like a lot of other equipment we have, you want it under a roof. There's a lot of sensitive items in this machine, and I think with the sawdust and the moisture combinations. Oh, and then another big thing, compressed air to blow it off every day, or even in the middle of a day. And for anything like a hay baler or anything, we use it on everything. A real sweet thing would be if somehow that could be on board, where that motor will charge a compressor and maybe have an air tank or something that could be mounted underneath in here somewhere where it would be out of the way. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but I do believe there's a way to make that happen. And that way, cleaning this thing off, just grab the hose with a reel or something, and out she goes. Otherwise, wherever my shed is set up, where your structure is, where you normally have it, to have compressed air near it, or a line buried from your shop to that spot where you can just crack open a valve and blow it off. And that, I think, it would be a huge plus for maintenance of this machine, especially before you oil it and things like that, or lube it up. Okay, and then on all the jacks, there's 6 jacks. I did see also a guy where he cut these off, put a nut on there, and then he either used a cordless drill with a socket, or even welded a socket on the end of one of these as a crank, so these weren't hanging out there when you're in operation. Because I think what's going to end up happening with these, and I can see it already, that certain pieces of lumber are going to end up bending or breaking those, through time. They may get thumped. So if they were actually removable and then just had the nub there, I think that would be a plus, which that's something we're going to get probably done in the future. And then I did put stickers on to where to place the logs, maybe just to help, so you can center the log over the log turner and the log spike, because right in here is kind of your main area. Unless you got really long stuff, you're going to be using this area, these 3 or 4 log stops over the rest of them. So that's, again, that was all simple stuff. So here I got 3 2x10 planks, and I got baler belt screwed to it. I put like 9 screws with washers in there, and this is dried out white oak. that I've had sawed by the Amish years ago, and a full 2-inch planks. And they are what I call cribbing. So those would go under these and extend across. So I got 3 of those to go under all 6 jacks. And then it'll line up with the rubber. And that's if you're not set up on cement. And even if you are, I think it helps keep things from slipping and sliding around as you're getting logs up and on the machine and off again with material. So when moving the mill, these will stay with the mill. The log dog will hold them up against the log stops until we set up. And then I did bring 2 other pieces with of some scrap, because when you want to saw your flitches, if you don't have an edger, these log dogs, they'll only get this close, which it leaves me maybe about 4 to 5 inches here, between here and the log stop. So then you need to put in something like this, which will go across, because these are 3 feet apart, to make it like a filler. If you're only going to use like 2 or 3 flitches to cut them into actual boards, you're going to need something there. So I got one longer one and one shorter one. That's all minor stuff, but it's stuff you learn you're going to need to have available. That is a lot of what I think of this mill. I love it so far. I'm real excited. We got a pile of logs up on the hill. Hopefully this winter we can get at those and really put in a couple good days of just sawing and really getting ourselves familiar with this thing and really producing some lumber. Up to now we were just kind of playing and not really, just learning and getting used to things, which is normal. Farm machinery is the same way. When you get something new, seems like it takes you a while to feel it out before you really get comfortable with it. But I was a little bit scared and a little bit uncertain, I guess you could say, when we first brought this thing home, of how am I going to adapt to this whole thing. But I have sawed lumber with the Amish probably about 30, 40 different times through the last 30 years. Back in the 80s, we had a guy with a circular mill that lived in the area that it was a portable mill, and that was quite a machine, and he did have all the hydraulics added on it and everything too. So I had a fair amount of experience sawing lumber, but never with my own machine, of course. So if you look up Timber King, there's a lot of guys out there like me and Thomas and Gary, adding our 2 cents of what we think of these things and how they're working. And some of them guys got little smaller models, but concept is all the same. A lot of the components are exactly the same. There's maybe less of them, or the deck is shorter and things like that. So there's not a lot of differences in certain parts of it. Mostly motor size, whether it go gas or diesel, and of course the bigger they get, the more hardier, and then of course the price tag goes right along there with it. So this video is getting probably way too long already. I'm gonna stop here, and I'm sure in the future here you'll be seeing more of this.